Thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay? Good stuff. It's great to be here this morning with you all, sharing a little about what we're doing back in England to really innovate and support and develop schools and education in a number of different ways. Over the last 10 years, myself and my team, we've been fortunate enough to be to play a significant role in developing a number of innovation programs across England that have gone a number of different ways to almost changing the face of how education works in England. And I'm going to share a number of them with you this morning. A tiny bit about myself. I spent a few years in government, a few years thinking about what I wanted to do next, and then before I started my own company. And so what essentially I've discovered over the past 10 years is that innovation and education are like best friends. If you think of your best friend, you communicate with one another, you rely on each other, you share things together. Whenever something big is happening in the life of one of you, the other is there. I want you to think of education and innovation in that way. Wherever education is, innovation is there. Whenever something big is happening in education in any way, innovation should be a part of it. And so I'd like to take you through a few programs that we've developed over the past 10 years that have really seen education and innovation working together. My company, we do something simply very simple. We design, develop, and support innovation and entrepreneur programs to really address big challenges. And we do it with a number of, I guess, really high-profile companies. But I want to take you through two that we've worked with this morning. In particular, the Department for Education in England, and also a company called Techstars. Even though we work with many companies, there is one guiding question that we always try to ask, and that is always asked of us. And that is, how do we really design and develop innovation programs that really help solve really big challenges? And I want to take you through a few big challenges that we've faced in England and how we've designed and developed some innovation programs with schools, with partners, with organizations, with teachers, to really help overcome some of those challenges. The first one is with the Department for Education and Schools, and they asked us a very simple question. How do we help schools better serve their communities? Now, we may think schools already serve their communities. They educate children, support parents. We might allow our schools to be used for different things, you know, judo classes and after-school clubs and maybe a holiday program. But we wanted to take it one step further. We wanted to look at an entire school and say, how can we help a school best serve its community? Now, if you take a typical school, or what might look like a typical school in London or in the rest of England, it has so many different assets that are a part of that school that, interestingly enough, are paid for by taxpayers' money. So the idea that actually it should be better served for that community who ultimately pays for that school every day. And so if you look at maybe some of the things in a school, you have buildings, you have sports facilities, you have play areas, and then you have the whole surrounding area. Now the question is, how can we help make that school better used for its community? So a typical school in London 10 years ago was maybe open at 8:30 in the morning and maybe closed at 3:30, most of them. You had some of them who ran maybe an after-school club, and they ran from 3:30 in the afternoon until 4 o'clock. And that's great. But a school has so many things that can be used throughout the day. It's also closed on weekends. It's closed during many holidays, like summer breaks and Easter. The building is closed. But how can we make a school better serve its community throughout the entire year, not just from 8:30 in the morning until maybe 3 or 4:30, but maybe from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night? And so here's some of the things that we did. We worked with maybe you had local neighbors who wanted to maybe run their own knitting classes on a Sunday afternoon to help the rest of the community. Well, why could they not use one of the classrooms? You had sports coaches who had football clubs and maybe wanted to run a football tournament or football coaching through the summer holidays. Why could they not use maybe some of the sports facilities right the way through the 6 weeks holidays? We then took it one step further, and we did surveys with the neighbors. And we said, and asked them, if your school was to be better used to help you, in what ways could it help? And some of the incredible feedback we got was amazing. Some of the things we heard from neighbors, we didn't realize that actually they had thought of. So maybe some of the neighbors and some of the parents said, actually, we've been thinking about getting back into work. We haven't had a job for a while, and we need help filling out our resumes and CVs. How about parenting classes? And so that's what we did. We worked with different organizations around the area to work with the school to set up parenting classes that ran not just in the evenings from 4:30 in the evening till 6 o'clock, but also on Saturdays, to help parents fill out resumes and support them to get back into work and to find jobs. These are all different ways a school could be used. We took it even one step further. And we think about some of the things that may exist outside all different parts of the community. Things like a doctor's surgery. So one of the challenges many parents had was when they had to pick up their children, they would have to rush across town to then go to a doctor's surgery to get to their appointment. Well, why not have the nurses from the doctor's surgery set up within the school? That way, when parents come pick up their children, they can have their appointment right there on site. These are some of the things that we were thinking about and how we could make a school best serve its community. We started off with a number of schools in London. That went on to training 800 teachers around the country in how they could think about designing new services for their school. How could they help set up all different types of services? Parenting classes, breakfast clubs, after-school clubs, parent support groups, computer training. All of these things could happen within a school. But we also supported schools to work with different organizations. Where the school needed help or they didn't want to run things themselves, they could also work with different organizations to help them do that with them. And so we worked with 130 schools across the country to help them work with different organizations in how they could open up their school to be better used by the community. Now, I'm under no illusion. This is not just something that happens overnight. We spent a number of months and a couple of years working with schools, helping them think about how they can better use their schools. Some of the fears that teachers had was, if I come in on a Monday morning when someone's been using my school over the weekend, will I find the children's work all over the floor? Not necessarily. We can understand those fears, but actually they found that those partnerships worked really well, and actually some of the organizations and clubs and people that they worked with to use their schools actually helped them run their schools a lot better. It actually worked out a lot better for them. Number two, we worked in 2011 with a company called Techstars, founded in Colorado. They wanted to run their very first entrepreneur program in London, but they wanted to run it in a very different way. They wanted to run it for education. The problem they wanted to figure out was, how could they, and us, and we, better help teachers work with entrepreneurs and technology developers to build the kind of tools they might need, and teachers might need, in just 54 hours. Now, here's the challenge. All over the world, and especially in London, you have incredible, forward-thinking teachers who are brilliant at what they do. They are brilliant at their job, but there are some tools that they think, actually, if only I had this, maybe I could do my job a bit better. But on the other hand, you have amazing entrepreneurs and technology developers who know how to build great things, but they don't always know what's needed in a school. But if we put those two groups together in a room like this, what could we come up with? And so, that's exactly what we did. We put 120 entrepreneurs and teachers in a venue to work together. And this is how we did it. We had teachers pitch some of their ideas to entrepreneurs about some of the challenges that they had within schools. We then had some of the entrepreneurs and technology developers pitch some of their ideas on some of the things that they thought might work in a school. What they were then able to do, hearing each other and knowing all the needs and different things that they were thinking of, they were then able to build teams to then think about how they can work on those ideas together. Over the course of Friday evening, Saturday night, Sunday morning, Saturday evening, they formed teams and they worked together. Now, here's the beauty of this process, is that some teachers who were communicating their ideas came with brilliant ideas, but then they heard an idea that maybe one of their colleagues, teachers, gave and said, you know what, I prefer your idea better. Can we work on it together? And that's exactly what they did. And so they formed teams over the course of a Friday evening, and all Saturday, they worked on those ideas together. They worked on those ideas where you had, in one team, you had an entrepreneur, you had a teacher, you had a technology developer, like an app developer or like a website developer, who was then able to build those ideas over the course of a day and a half. And then what they was able to do was then pitch those ideas on how they've proceeded or what progress they'd made and see which ones came out better. One of the great ideas that came out of this was an idea called Night Zookeeper. Night Zookeeper was an idea that came out of a team. The challenge that the team came up with was, when children are thinking about reading and writing, and when teachers are trying to help children read and write, they recognize that the thing that made the biggest difference to children's progress in reading and writing was how enthusiastic the child was. Now, the challenge was, how do we help children be as enthusiastic about reading and writing at home as they are at school? And so what they came up with was this idea about Night Zookeeper, where the children, through an online platform, a blog, and a game, were able to enter an imaginary world where they would write about being a zookeeper at night, looking after animals. They would then write reports for the rest of their class to read. Of course, children were very enthusiastic to share their stories with the rest of the class. And the rest of the class was enthusiastic to read about what all the other children in their class were writing about and how they were taking care of their animals. What started off as an idea for just one class actually launched and scaled to support 300,000 children across the country from just one idea. Not only that, 54% of all of the children that now use Night Zookeeper use it at home rather than at school. And what teachers fed back was that they were able to achieve within the space of one term what generally took them 1 year. That is one of the great things and processes that we was able to help these schools and teachers do over the course of a year. And it's an example of what happens when you put teachers, entrepreneurs, and technology developers in one space to come up with some brilliant things. The last one is with the Department for Education. And we wanted to solve a very unique problem with this one. And it was around childcare. Now, here is the challenge that we kind of observed when we first started speaking to our government about this. If you think of the typical day for a parent, I'm sure many of you are parents here, and in London, childcare is as much as the cost of a mortgage, if not more. So the amount you pay for childcare is more than the mortgage on your house. For a single parent with maybe 2 children, the cost of childcare is 50% of your monthly income. So you can imagine the challenge that that presents for parents. And so we got asked a very simple question: how can we make childcare more affordable and more accessible? Childcare is expensive, as we know, but it's also a challenge in terms of its access as well. Again, historically, in England, many parents use nannies or childminders. And so the process of their day is like this. They wake up, they get their children ready, and they drop their child to the childminder. The childminder then takes the child from their house to school, and the parent goes to work. The child is at school, and then the childminder, at the end of the day, picks up the child, takes it from school to home. The parent leaves work, goes to the childminder's house, and then takes the child from the childminder's house to home. That's a hugely convoluted day. So here is what we did. We simply asked, why can the school not be the child service? So all you have to do, and all a parent has to do, is take the child from home to school and pick them up again and go home. Simple. The challenge with that is, again, as I mentioned, most schools opened at 8:30, and most schools closed at least around 4:30. That doesn't really fit with a parent's working day. So we had to work with schools to open up longer, from maybe 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the evening. But every single day of the week and 50 weeks of the year, the school had to be open for parents who work a 9-to-5 job to be able to work and drop their children at school at 8 o'clock and pick them up at 6 o'clock. It sounds easy, but it's not. There's a huge cultural shift that needs to happen, where a school, which is historically a place where children are educated, to now running a fully fledged childcare business. So what we had to do was literally take schools through a process of learning what it means to be business owners. How do you develop business models? How do you really develop a service that parents would want to pay for? And so what we was able to do over the course of a year was work with a number of schools to pilot 3 different models of childcare within a school. The first model was, why not let teachers be the staff of the childcare service? Within a school, you usually have maybe supply teachers and teaching assistants who may want to have extra hours or work extra hours and may want to have a year-long contract, so they can be the staff of the childcare service. The other model was teachers may want to do that, but they may not want to do it throughout the year. So they will just do it in term time, and then during the summer holidays, then you can have another service, an outside private service, come in and run it during the summer holidays. And that's what we did. Or you had this third scenario where actually teachers may not want to do that at all. They may just want an outside private service to come into the school, and they have the staff, they employ the staff, they run everything on the school site to run a childcare service. And that's the model that we did. An important point was that that service had to recognize, understand, and mold itself and adapt itself to the ethos, values, and the culture of that school. And so what we was able to do over the course of a year was design 3 different types of childcare service across England, and then train 120 teachers or schools and the teachers in that schools to develop new types of childcare services. One of the things that we found was the incredible impact that this made. One of the things that we did before we started designing these services was that we actually did a questionnaire and consultation with a number of the parents, and we simply asked them to tell us their experiences of childcare. One of the really moving things that we understood was the experience that parents went through just to manage their childcare. There was one parent I recall who said something really impactful and really powerful. She said this: during the month of June, the end of June, to the beginning of July, her family stops taking her phone calls because they think she's calling to ask for help for childcare. Stories like this moved myself and my team to figure out ways that we could help parents like her really have better childcare services. We heard so many different stories like that. After we had piloted a number of these childcare services across about 10 to 15 schools, we then rolled it out across the country. And again, we heard story after story after story about the challenges parents were having with childcare. And one of the things that we did was we shared these stories with the schools themselves. Of course, we made parents' names and who they were anonymous, but we shared these stories with schools. And schools, many of them, were completely unaware of the challenges that their parents were having with childcare. And that was one of the real motivating factors of why many of the schools decided to then run their own childcare service. In that one parent school that I just told you about, we had designed a holiday program in that school throughout the entire 6-week summer break that ran from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock. So that parent could continue working and not have to worry about where she would find childcare during the summer holidays. After we had finished designing it, we went back to that parent and asked her, how are things now that your children are able to attend this summer program and you're able to work and continue to work? She said, I cannot thank you enough. My children are so happy. They've been here for only a couple of weeks and they don't want to leave. In fact, every summer holiday, I used to take them to a theme park and they say they would rather stay in school. These are examples of some of the programs that we've run and some of the things that we've done in schools in England. But the one particularly with childcare is the one that I feel has impacted the most, because it wasn't just about technology. It wasn't just about innovation in a huge way. Actually, it was about innovation, about attitudes and cultures that just needed to shift from schools and from innovators and from different members of the community all coming together to create different services in schools. And so a number of the things that we thought about in all 3 of those programs was just about the problem that we wanted to solve. How could we really dig down into this problem and identify what the real problem was? How could we ask people, talk to people? have a better understanding of people's experiences about designing new programs? What are the solutions that we could come up with? And not just solution, as in singular, but solutions, plural, many, because one size doesn't always fit all. What's the experience of the users, and who are they? How could we really understand the challenges that users have, and how they might use things? What's the design of these particular programs? How could we tweak them in different ways that they would fit the way the school works, not just a one-size-fits-all, but a design to each and every unique individual school? How do we test things, including our own assumptions? That's one of the things that we really try to do, is not always assume things, but always test things to see how they worked. And then deliver it and review it again and again to see if it continues working. These are examples that you can take for yourself and see what works in your schools and around your regions. And I hope that you have as much fun as we did having it as well. Thank you.